Welcome back, fiber friends, to the Wool to Gold podcast, where we talk about everything fiber art, a lot of spinning, mostly spinning. I answer questions, I do tutorials sometimes, and sometimes I just go on rants about fiber and art and spinning yarn in general. My name is Brian, and I am your host. And we have a few things to cover today, so I think I'm just going to jump into finished objects pretty head first. I do have some minor acquisitions, but really they were gifted to me by my aunt. My little cousin gave up crochet about 2 years ago. She really only did it for about a month, and then they held on to the supplies for 2 years. But she passed off some of the yarn to me recently, so I'm going to show you guys that. But not right away. First, we're going to start with what we finished because we have some exciting finished objects. So I did want to do a just quick side-by-side comparison of my two drop spindled skeins, just because, look at the difference between these two. Just so much progress made in so little time. And I have cast something on or, started a new project. I don't know why I call everything a cast on. I should really stop doing that. Does anybody else do that? Again, I don't even really knit anymore. I just call everything a cast on. But this is what I've started on my drop spindle. This is a little bit of natural brown Coopworth from the Fiber Kingdom in New York. I just think Coopworth is such a pleasure to spin. It always is. Me and my friend Sam were talking about this. If you're looking to teach yourself long draw or just practice your long draw, especially non-supported long draw, get yourself some Coopworth. This stuff spins like butter. It's just such a pleasure and so fun. And honestly, after spinning a frankly heavily felted, a lot of this fiber, as beautiful as it was, again, the company doesn't exist anymore. I don't feel bad saying this. It was felted, especially the darker blues on this. A good portion of that was felted, and so it was kind of a pain in the butt to drop spin. This Coopworth, it spins like butter. It's wonderful. Speaking of things from Fiber Kingdom, so I have this other 2-ounce Cheviot sample that I would really like to spin up because I want to compare it to this other finished object that I have. So this is Brecknock Hill Cheviot. So the Fleece and Fiber Sourcebook lists 3 different major Cheviot groups. This is the smallest and the Welsh Cheviot. So as you can see, it's a 2-ply. I didn't get a lot of yardage. It's 19 yards. It's different, I have to say, than the other Cheviot that I felt. I think this is probably the coarsest Cheviot sample that I have. That being said, I still find it next to Skin Soft. I would have no problem wearing this as even a hat. I just think it's worth noting that it's definitely a little bit coarser on average than the US Cheviot that I get my hands on. Also, from the research that I've done, again, these are the smallest Cheviot breeds, so you can find a 4-pound Welsh Cheviot fleece, whereas if you've ever tried to source a Cheviot fleece in the US, they're big fleeces. They can be 8-10 pounds. That being said, this is some really nice, fun, soft fiber. I would love to spin this up just so I could do a side-by-side breed study comparison for you guys. Speaking of breed studies, okay, this is probably my favorite thing that I've spun in a while, and I want to talk about why, because I think this is probably some spinners' absolute nightmare, what I have in my hands here. So this is 100% North Ronaldsay. So North Ronaldsay is one of those primitive breeds, really primitive, like Iron Age primitive. This is an old sheep, and we actually now have evidence that this sheep is on record as existing and being domesticated pre-Iron Age, which I think is really awesome. It survives mostly on seaweed now. It's located in the, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. These sheep are located on the archipelago of Orkney, which is located off of I believe the northern coast of Scotland. I don't want to have to pull out the Fleece and Fiber Sourcebook to re-look up all of this information. But essentially it is a grouping of islands, and on the northernmost island is North Ronaldsay, where you can find these sheep. There's a super small population of people there. These sheep used to be rood, R-O-O-E-D, rood, which means that the wool was actually plucked off of them, and because they're a primitive or double-coated, and I'm going to talk a little bit why I put double-coated in quotations there, a double-coated breed, people used to be able to rue the softer down fleece, sort of that whiter fiber you see there, off of the sheep, and then the black guard hairs, the coarser hairs, would stay on the sheep and be able to be plucked off at a different time, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Nowadays, they mostly shear them. It's one of those, it's kind of like Shetland, where you can get some fleeces that are mostly hair and then some fleeces that are mostly wool. The mostly wool ones are very, very soft. If I could get my hands on like a mostly wool North Ronaldsay, if you have a North Ronaldsay plug, hook me up. Shoot me a DM. You know what to do. I'll pay good money. I really will. For a good sheep fleece, I am mostly a US sheep fleece guy, but I can't get this specific thing in the US. And this was fascinating. I liked spinning this because it's not just dual coated. It's like quadruple coated, so there's like a really wide range variety of staple lengths in this, and some spinners really hate spinning things that are such a variety of staple lengths, because when you have 5 to 6 different staple lengths, it's just hard to get a super consistent spin. I love hand spun for its inconsistent look, and so this really didn't bother me. I really found this to be an absolute joy to spin. Again, these UK samples I got from the Witchwood spinner. You might be able to still get that breed study pack, but I got one of the last like 3, so I'm not sure if she has any left. I would love to get more breed study packs to try out, especially of US breeds, and currently I am kind of planning on trying to put together my own breed study US pack, possibly just like specifically the East Coast I would like to focus on, make it kind of really localized. It would be raw or scoured samples that I would send out to people of a number of different heritage breeds. That's sort of the project that I'm working on right now. But back to the FOs. This was just so much fun. I had a really great time spinning this. I would love to spin more of this if I got the opportunity. But I think that it would probably be a pricey endeavor, so we'll see. Okay, next up on finished objects, probably the thing that if you are just recently following me, especially from TikTok, this is probably what you're here to see. This is the finished dog yarn. So I have the smaller sample here is the one that I hand carded up, and then the larger sample here is the one that I spun from the Rolags. Both are going to be 2-ply, both I spun on my Lendrum. I really like the way they came out, frankly. I'm not always a fan of the way that Stellina and Sparkle look. However, I liked the amount of sparkle that was in this roving. Not this roving. It was combed top from Xander's Cottage. Actually might still have some of this colorway available, I'm pretty sure, if you are interested. I'll link him below just in case. And so as you can see, there is some blending that happened because I did put it on a blending board while blending it with the dog hair. But I'm very pleased with the way these came out. I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to do with them yet. I don't think I'm going to turn them into another scarf type garment. They might end up in either a bag, or I think I might crochet this into a little dog ornament for our tree or something like that. The holidays they have descended upon us. The cold weather has descended upon us. I'm going to talk more about that later. But next up on finished objects, we have these 2 skeins of California Variegated Mutant. These are from Bolayers. I mentioned that I wanted to spin. I had half of this spun for months. For months I had like about an ounce of it spun, and I just needed to spin the other ounce to ply it. It wasn't a big spin. I got stuck. I don't know. But I have to say, this finished yarn is magnificent, squishy, soft. I'm obsessed. I really like it because it is similar to the color of my hair, and I don't know why I find that so extra enchanting, but I do. I love Bolayers Orchard fiber. If you can get your hands on their fiber, oh god, it's such a pleasure to spin, and it's such a pleasure to squish once it's finished as well. This little mini skein was just the leftovers that I had after plying it. It'll probably go in somebody's order from my shop. But I'm happy these are done, and I'm really proud of how consistent this spin ended up, considering how much time was in between spinning the 2 singles. And that's why you take notes, kids. Because then you can put down a project and not think about it for months, and then pick it back up and spin it and still end up with a pretty consistent project. Again, consistency is not always my prerogative, but it is nice to, like, have the option, you know, and not just like go in blindly. All right, and that is all I have in terms of finished objects. So let's talk about whips. Works in progress. So I mentioned that I got a little bit of yarn from my aunt. So a lot of it is, it's the Lion brand basic stitch anti-pilling, and then she also gave me 2 skeins of wool ease, which I'm pretty sure is also Lion brand, and it's their acrylic wool blend. I'm pretty sure it's 80% acrylic, 20% wool. I'll pull out all the skeins in a second, but I did just want to talk a moment about the fact that I am not an art purist. So I do consider myself a fiber artist. I am still a little uncomfortable calling myself an artist. I have a weird relationship with that term. I've never really considered myself a super creative person until these recent like fiber endeavors, but we're working on it. It's step-by-step thing. But something that I wanted to talk about on the channel is the fact that I'm not a purist. As much as I love spinning and working with natural fibers specifically. I love working with wool. You guys already know that. I like working with alpaca. During the summer, I would like to work more with some non-GMO cottons, especially the ones that I have from Fox Fiber Island. I didn't realize when I was picking them up how coveted that cotton is, and I'm actually really, really excited to spin it now. I think I'm probably going to spin it in the spring instead of the summer, so keep an eye out for that project. But the gist of it is that I really like spinning natural fibers. It's part of the reason I got into actually hand spinning things, so I had more control over the types of fibers that were being blended in and the types of blends I had access to as well. I will say too, once you actually pay off the spinning wheel, like after a certain amount of time, when you are sourcing your own base materials and you grow these relationships with your sellers, you do have the ability of sourcing things in a way that like you can spin some pretty luxury blends for not like a luxury price, which is a nice thing about spinning. But before all of that, I use plenty of acrylic yarn, and when people give me acrylic yarn, especially acrylic yarn that they would have otherwise thrown away, which was what was going to happen to it in this case, they might have donated it, maybe, but I don't even know about that. I am happy to use the yarn for one thing, I'm happy to use the yarn for one thing because it's not going to end up just automatically in a landfill. And at the end of the day, I do have people in my life who are just not going to hand wash things. I feel like this is something that, like, listen, I don't love working with superwash, and I really don't love spinning superwash. I don't like always want to work with acrylics and superwash. However, I do have some people in my life who are just 100% acrylic and superwash people. Like, they cannot be trusted with wool or luxury fiber. It would be such a waste on them, but I don't want to not make them things for Christmas and for holidays. So that is why I do have some acrylic yarn in my stash. I haven't done a yarn stash tour, but you'll see that. And actually, when I talk about some of the Christmas gifts that I'm making this year, I am using acrylic for a number of them for a number of reasons. So speaking of going into whips, the reason I brought all of that up is because I cast on this hat. It's already almost done. I'm doing the decreases already. My dad requested, I'm going to insert a picture here of the hat that the Zac Brown band. I don't know anything about this artist, really. I'm not hip with the kids. However, this man wears this hat. My dad wanted one of these hats. There's some other men in my family who want now these hats, now that they know that my dad is getting one. And frankly, it took me like not even a whole day to get this much done. I could probably make one of these hats a day if I wanted to. It's just a double crochet, and then I'm doing single crochet for the stripes. And I'm using these colors because my dad is a sports fan, and this is his sport team colors. And so yeah, I'm making these hats. I'm probably gonna make one for my brother that maybe matches this or is in a similar sport team colorway. And then I'm also going to be using some of that yarn to make matching hats for my sister and her boyfriend. Her boyfriend does like open sea fishing stuff, and as much as I would love to give him something wool because I feel like it would be better on the ocean, he's gonna throw it in the washer and dryer, and he's the kind of guy who would feel so bad if he ruined a hat that I made him. So they're getting some acrylic hats for Christmas, and that's a whip that I'm working on right now. That's really the only one I've started. I'll make them one at a time most likely. I just remembered for the umpteenth time that I have the Wool-E's, so maybe they'll get matching hats from the Wool-E's so that they can wear them on these fishing trips. I like these colors too. They're, you know, I like green and a neutral. I also have this color here, which I do think looks nice with this blue, so maybe somebody will get some hats in these colors. I'm not really sure. And if you are curious, so again, this is Lion Brand's Basic Stitch Anti-Pilling, and this is color Taupe Heather. This is color Turquoise Heather, and I know that this is Pine Heather. And then for this Wool-E's, was I right about the... Yes, it's 80% acrylic, 20% wool. I get about 200 yards to each of these, a little under that. And does it have a colorway name? Let's see. Natural Heather and Forest Green Heather. I think that is an accurate description for these. Yeah, these are going to become some Christmas gifts. I appreciate that she was like, you know what? I'm not going to use this yarn. My daughter's not going to use this yarn. Take it. I'm not going to turn it down. Happy to have it for gifts. Okay, so other whips that I'm working on, and I've made a fair amount of progress on this. I worked on this during Thanksgiving, as you can see. This is my, I don't know if it's just going to be sleeves, depending on how much yarn I have left once I finish the actual sleeve portion. It might end up being like a crop top sweater thing. But this is the Malvinas Noro yarn, their new line. I am obsessed with this. This has been such a pleasure to work with. I think the colorway looks absolutely gorgeous. As you can see, there's just a lot of depth and dimension. And then I'm also using Plant Mom by the Sheepyshire, and you can see that it's greens with like pops of magentas. And I'm on a portion of the sleeve now where we're doing a lot of the Plant Mom. And so I think that's just going to look really, really nice. And then the plan is to do, at minimum, the cuffs in these two colors. These are two hand-spun balls that I got at Maryland Sheep and Wool. I don't remember exactly from who, unfortunately, and they did not come with tags. But here's that yarn. And you might have noticed I have them in this yarn bowl that I did not pay for. I got this for, I think it's probably still written on the bottom, $3.90, $4 at my local thrift store. So this was a rad find because these suckers are like minimum like $20, I feel like. So for $4, I was very happy. This was a great find. All right. All right, so next up for works in progress, I have made a little bit of progress on my Drystale Spin. So I've really only spun one of the 3 plies of one of the 4 braids. But it is a start, and I'm starting to really get the hang of spinning the Drysdale. It does remind me a little bit of Herdwick, but with a longer staple. Now, there is a little bit of Kemp, and with the Drysdale, I do think with a lot of breeds like Drysdale and Herdwick, sometimes there's a little bit more variety in the like exact staple length. It's not always exactly consistent. And that doesn't necessarily, count as a fault in certain breeds. So It's just something that you kind of have to get used to handling. Luckily, I came into this spin right after I had spun the North Ronald say, which was definitely more of a challenging spin than this Drysdale is. And so this really was fun once I figured out exactly how I wanted to spin it. I didn't realize it was going to like being spun woolen so much, but it really does. It comes out a lot faster that way too, which I have no complaints about. This project might end up being done a little bit earlier than expected, but again, I'm really trying to not put any pressure on myself for this. If you are new here, this project is being spun for the Stitches in Starlight make-along with Tashiana from Stitches in Starlight or Tangles in Starlight on Instagram. It's a really low pressure make-along, so if you've never done a make-along before and you're looking to join in, come join this one. It's super fun. There are no rules, there are no themes, and there's very loose deadlines. I don't really have anything else on the wheel right now because I haven't settled on what exactly I want to do for my beaded spin. So I feel like a beaded... I felt like a beaded boucle yarn would be too much, but then I'm like, what is too much? It's my yarn. There are no fiber police. I have these really fun, like, weird wooden star beads that I got from somebody's D-stash, and I've just kind of been holding on to because I think they're really cool. I don't really know what to use them for. So I'm thinking, like, beaded star yarn? I don't know. We haven't really settled on a base yet. I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but it's something that is going to be a whip eventually. And I decided that I'm going to try to drop spin while we have a little chat about today's subject for the podcast, which is going to be mental health and fiber arts, or mental health and art in general. So I know I am not alone in being someone who came to fiber arts during a difficult time in my life. And as I've mentioned in the past, I've never really considered myself an exceptionally creative person. The only place where I was ever really creative, and this was more when I was in middle school and high school, was in writing. And I had a really, really complicated relationship with my writing. I still kind of do. So even though I do acknowledge it as like an art form, an expression, and an expression of creativity, I've never really had a healthy relationship with my creative pursuits in writing. And what I mean by that is that it's not that I don't create good things when I write. It's more that due to, I think, a number of different factors, I tend to feel like my writing is really only good when I'm suffering, and like suffering heavily. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that writing can be like a really lovely expression for the struggles that we go through with mental health, and I've really tried to change the relationship that I have with my writing. However, this has been an effort and not always a super successful one. So I'm really pleased to have found fiber arts as a new art form that I don't have this relationship with. However, I would like to keep it that way, and I have to sort of monitor, like, how I feel about my creating during difficult times. Because like it's awesome to have something to rely on when you're having a hard time. But I also don't want to fall into the trap of once again feeling like I can only create really beautiful or wonderful things or make good, successful art because I'm feeling bad, because that's not good either. And I know I can't be the only person that like feels this way about their making and about their art, but I just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about that today and talk about the nuances of using art to aid mental health, because as much as it can help me, it can also just culture, I don't know, this like weird relationship. I also just wanted to like sit down and talk about how like this is just like a crappy time of year and I'm not having a good time. I know that there are a lot of other makers and fiber artists and artists in general right now that are not having a superb time. Not only is it that time of year, but there are also just a lot of horrible things going on in the world right now. I don't know about anybody else too, but right now I feel like I am having kind of a nice productive boom in terms of my art, but I also am someone who really struggles with balancing like being productive in my art or just other side pursuits, and then balancing that with like social and even like physical obligations. So like this time of year, just making sure that like I am eating enough and drinking enough water, because sometimes I get like so caught up in projects, and on one hand, like I feel like from an outsider's perspective, like that is something that is really like romanticized, like this idea of getting like so caught up in your art that you like forget the outside world. And like as like wonderful and like aesthetic as that kind of like seems from the outside, and even though like I it's not that I like dislike those times necessarily, because I get a lot of stuff done, but it's also just like not good for me and not sustainable in the long run either. Shit like that is how you end up with burnout. And so trying to make sure that I am balancing, you know, actually taking care of myself and then making art, and then like social obligations on top of that. I am already someone who really like struggles to know like how much socializing is the right amount of socializing, and like maintaining friendships with people who are just don't necessarily like think the way that my brain thinks and works the way that my brain works, and kind of letting them know that I do care and I am thinking about them. But again, it's just like not harder for me to reach out. I don't know. That's its own thing. And then I think another thing that can be hard this time of year is that like I know again like a lot of makers are struggling in a number of different ways, and we are like sharing our ways of coping with that and dealing with that. It'd be so easy to like compare ourselves to other people. And I think another thing too that is just like, this is my own personal, you know, brand of trauma. I don't know if other artists necessarily struggle with this, but the feeling of always needing to be practical and balancing that with just like making or art. So I had a partner that was very obsessive about things. Everything needed to be practical, and in their opinion, at least through most of our relationship, in their opinion, like having dreams or thinking you could be really anything other than just nobody was impractical. That was like silly. Like so few people are successful artists or make any money off of art, and so why would you waste your time ever doing it? And like over the years, I have obviously, you know, worked through a lot of that, and now I make art, and I don't think that art needs to be practical or make me any money in order for it to be like useful to me. It is just a nice, fun, wonderful thing, an addition in my life. It's a coping skill, and it doesn't need to be anything but an enjoyment for me for it to be worth being in my life. That being said, oh my god, this time of year, I'm out here battling the demons, like especially when it comes to starting spins that might not end up being a super duper wearable project. So things like that beaded spin, I would really like to do some beaded spins, and I think that the fabric that I'm going to end up making is going to be something very wearable. But there's this like little nagging thing in the back of my mind that's like, what if you don't end up using those materials to their full potential? Or what if you end up wasting them? Or what if they would have been better used in something that is just going to be worn every day? But then I also consider that like the things that I wear every day aren't necessarily what other people would consider, like they are what other people would consider more statement pieces, and to me they are like a neutral. So everything is really just in the eye of the beholder. I just wanted to share some of my silly brain thoughts this season, because again, I feel like I'm looking around and a lot of my favorite fiber artists are just not having a good time right now. It's not the best. We all need a little bit of dopamine. That's why I do think that I'm going to be doing a yarn stash tour, because not only do I think it will bring a lot of my viewers the dopamine of, you know, being able to see new yarn without having to like spend money or like go out and do anything like that. I think it will also culture feelings of, you know, like loving our stash, appreciating and being grateful for what we have, not feeling guilty about the things that we have collected, and instead like cherishing and valuing them, and be like, I deserve to use these things. These things are wonderful. I bought them for myself and I deserve that. So I do think that's what next week's video is probably going to be about. But I did just want to like come on here and talk a little bit about struggling this time of year, because it's hard out here, and I am someone that I think like a lot of people have struggled their entire lives with things like depression and social anxiety and regular anxiety and a whole slew of other mental illnesses. And it's just nice to know that, we're not alone out here. I don't necessarily have a ton of like super, helpful tips when it comes to fighting these things, or I don't necessarily have a ton of like original tips, but I do like what a lot of other creators have been doing, which is just like, shouting out some folks that really, like get them through their week, just are a little like highlight and part of their week. So I did want to do that. One podcast that I wanted to shout out is the Wool and Spinning Radio. The host is Rachel Smith, and I'm going to put a little screenshot of one of the episodes that I have really enjoyed this past week. It is also about mental health, so if you're looking to just listen to a whole hour-long ramble about those things, this was a really great episode. And then another creator that is just like bringing me joy whenever a new episode pops up on my feed, and that creator is Jordan Amanda, or Jackass Collective. If you haven't seen any of those podcast episodes, just, I mean, I just, whenever one of those new episodes pops up, like I get some spinning ready and I just sit back and prepare to thoroughly enjoy myself. I just absolutely love the vibes. I'm really about it. Might not be your thing. Just putting it out there. It brings me joy, and we are focusing on the positive this week. Last but not least, I have mentioned her before, but I will mention her again. If you do not already follow Mine Woolen here on YouTube, that is just another creator that like every video that pops up, every time I get to watch her do anything, it just puts a smile on my face. It makes me happy. She's done a few different episodes about dyeing with mushrooms, which I think is really, really fun. I would experiment with natural dyeing again, just to dye with some fungi, because she made it seem like a really good time. So go check her out. She is also just like a cup full of joy. And I think that's all I really have to say this week, Fiber Friends. I know it was not an exceptionally long one, but you guys are going to get a yarn tour in the very near future, and that will be quite a long video. I'm suspecting it's probably going to be around an hour, because I like to include all of the details for you guys. So thanks for coming along on today's little podcast, little fiber adventure. I hope that your week gets better if it's not already going super great. If you don't already follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you can find that information below. Along with my shop, I am doing some little mini surprise shop drops, because my recent yarn drop sold out really, really quickly. Thank you again for everybody who bought some yarn and is supporting my art. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Go make something, Fiber Friends.